In sports, athleticism matters, talent matters, but perhaps more than anything, as we learned over the course of yesterday, composure matters. Whether it's Framber Valdez or the guy who fouled out with over 4 minutes to go in NBA Finals game number 3. Hello and welcome aboard Gallant and George on Thursday, June 13th, 2024. I am Paul Gallant. He is Joe George.
Oh, Paul.
I mean, we are both people who, due to our Irish ancestry,
Yes.
are quick-tempered.
Yes.
I think over time, I've become better when it comes to managing my temper and keeping composed. But it's a everyday struggle. I'm assuming it's the same thing for you.
Yeah, little things can set you off, but, try to stay calm, cool, calm, composed at all times. It's not easy. It's not easy. Things can trigger me, but I try my best to. What's that movie?
Anger management.
Goose Fraba.
Goose Fraba, indeed.
What a great scene that
I was
is.
about to go right to that line.
What a great scene. I love that movie.
I don't love watching Framber Valdez going up against the offense of a National League team that's under 500 and struggle. And it's not something that we're unfamiliar with. When Framber Valdez starts to have bad innings, oh boy, it turns into an avalanche and quickly. After yesterday's game, Joe Espada, manager of the Houston Astros, was asked why he pulled Framber Valdez after just 59 pitches and 4 innings of work. Here's what he had to say.
Stuff was good. It was staying up in the zone a bit. Anytime you see opponents hitting the ball in the air with ease, you kind of know that he's not missing down in the zone. So just not his best day.
Is that why you pulled him after 59?
Yeah, I thought at the time, just to give us a chance to win, Seth would have been good with that righty pocket there, since I didn't think that Framber was, super sharp today.
He definitely wasn't super sharp. When he first answers that question, you hear the pause, and you know that going through Joe Espada's mind is, I knew there was potential for this thing to really unravel after what went down in the 4th inning. And to the Astros bullpen credit, they came in and they shut the door. But today was one of those days where your starting pitching and your bats didn't show up, and now you're 4-30 on the year when you score 3 runs or less. This is what goes back to us whenever we talk about Framber Valdez and whether or not we want him to be a part of this team long term. The potential for this isn't just possible against a team with a loaded lineup like the Texas Rangers in the American League Championship Series or against the Atlanta Braves in the World Series. This is also possible against teams like this.
And this is Framber. Like, his last 2 starts before this, he pitches 16 innings, gives up 6 hits combined.
Pitched a complete
and
game
12
last
strikeouts.
Friday.
Like, he can be one of the best pitchers in baseball. He was last year, not too far before the All-Star break, was in the top 3 betting odds to win the American League Cy Young. Like, that's who Framber can be. But we all know, like, this is also part of Framber. He's Jekyll and Hyde. We've seen it, whether it's just his performance, the mental mistakes he'll make. Like, there's been think about like when he would charge home plate and then he airmails it, or he makes bad decisions at times. And that's why Framber has questions. I give Joe Espada, honestly, a lot of credit for making that decision yesterday. It's not easy to make that one, especially with a guy like Framber, who's probably not going to handle it very well, to be honest. I mean, this is a guy that last year we all assume that his downfall of the second half of the season really started when Dusty Baker told him he can't start in the All-Star game because he was going to be on too short of rest for that moment. Yet he chose Garrett Cole, who had pitched like 3 days prior. And that's when everything really fell apart for Framber in 2023.
That's an interesting link.
Yeah. And then this year, like this moment, this could lead to a disaster for Framber going forward. Like, he's not mentally tough. We all know that about Framber. That's not something is like breaking news to
He knows that.
Yeah, he knows that.
I mean, he's had mental health coaches, and look, I think we all deal with it in some way, shape, or form, as we said coming into it. But whenever you hear this from Framber, I felt a little uncomfortable. The pitches weren't doing what I wanted them to do, including the breaking stuff. So I was a little bit out of control there. At the very least, he didn't throw at somebody's head like he did in 2 games with a good one sandwiched in the middle, much like that one we just saw on Friday against the Rangers and Mariners in last year's regular season. And also, at least on the final out of that inning, on a ball that he fielded, he didn't throw that one into the stands, which he also does from time to time. Sometimes he gets hero ball-ish when he is somebody who's a defender. It's very annoying.
Yeah, he's just kind of reckless sometimes when he gets the ball in his hand, so you can tell he panics a little bit.
Right.
He doesn't have composure when he makes those plays typically.
The composure is not always there with him.
Yeah.
It's so important to have this. And no matter how good Framber is as a lefty, how filthy his stuff is, how conducive his game is to today's baseball game where he creates so many ground balls when everyone's trying to launch him out of the ballpark, this is always on the table. And I don't know how you fix this. And I think it's interesting that last night what we saw in the NBA Finals happened as well. Because if you watched last night's game, the Mavericks started off against the Celtics looking awesome. And Kyrie Irving finally showed up. He was engaged. But Luka Doncic was doing exactly what Luka Doncic has been doing all series long. And then at a moment in the second quarter, Luka really flopped to try and get a foul call, sits on the court, holds his hand up, complaining towards the referees, and Sam Hauser for the Boston Celtics goes to the top of the three-point line and buries a 3 that started Boston on a run. The very next play, Luka does the exact same thing. Another Boston 3 happens, and a huge lead that Dallas had early in that game that had me nervous evaporates. And while Dallas had a great run at the end of the game, if you watched from that point on, Luka was playing angry and out of control and lacked composure, constantly barking at referees, to the point that I think there were moments where referees were wondering whether or not they would give him an and-one call on a ball that they weren't sure was going to go through the basket. I feel like there was this one moment, and there was a very late whistle, and I think because of all the bitching and moaning that Luka did over the course of that game, they didn't call a foul there. And someone like this, Luka, who has all the talent, is going to have to get over stuff like this. And you can definitely tell that today, June 13th, 2024, unless someone grabbed him by the shirt and started yelling at him in Slovenian, I doubt that his mindset has changed very much from what he said right here when he was asked about the officiating in last night's game, which the Celtics eventually won 109-99.
Luka, what did you think of the whistles that went against you in the fourth quarter?
I mean, I don't know. We couldn't play physical, so I don't know. I don't want to say nothing, but 6 foul in the NBA Finals, where I'm like this. Come on, man. Better than that.
I mean, I think with Luka is he complains all the time. And he, as great of a player as he is, because of how much he complains, then because of how much he barks at the fans, whatever stadium he's in, I think that's why he doesn't get the LeBron treatment. He doesn't get the Steph Curry, the KD, like trying to be like 6 fouls. Come on, man. Well, dude, you got 3 fouls in 5 minutes?
And some of the fouls were
reckless
bad.
Basketball.
I can understand why someone would argue against that last foul call, but the one that he had, his 4th foul on Peyton Pritchard, was terrible. And that's what happens when all of a sudden you lose your composure. And hey, at the very least with Framber Valdez, after yesterday's game where he did get shelled for 4 runs, at the very least, he is self-aware enough to say, yeah, you know what? I lost control. And he didn't have a super meltdown where it looked like he was having a temper tantrum on the mountain. Now, we did have a couple of those last year. But Luka had a temper tantrum in the middle of that game, started playing poorly, stopped playing defense altogether, which has been a problem for a lot of this series. Not all of this game last night, by the way. He played defense for a little bit.
Yeah.
But the composure is so big in sports. And I think there are a few things more frustrating when you're watching a great athlete who you know is good that can't help but get pissy and then turn into a completely different player.
And the thing too about like last night's game for Luke, like Framber's one thing, right, Paul? Like, it's game like what, like 80 something. So like even if he loses his composure, like as much as we know this is like the deal with Framber, it's the middle of the game, like it's the middle of the season for Luka in the finals to lose your composure like this. It's just you can't do that. Like if Framber lost his composure like we've seen in the past in the World Series a couple years ago, that's an utter disaster. And he hasn't really done that. For the most part in the playoffs, he's not always great in the playoffs, but he's not making huge messes of himself. And I think the big difference between yesterday's game versus the history of Framber is what he acknowledged after the game and what Joe Espada said. Like, he just wasn't getting ground outs. He just was not pitching his best stuff. Blum was talking about it, him and TK on the broadcast, talking about the curveball just like was not working for him yesterday, not being able to get guys out, not getting guys to chase after it. So Framber was just probably didn't have his best stuff, and Joe Espada made the right decision to yank him before he had the full Framber meltdown. Luka, it's just inexcusable to have that performance in which you end up fouling out, even if that last call, they challenged it, and I wasn't sure which way they were going to go with it. So kind of what Luka said, to be honest, Paul, I thought they were going to overturn it. And I thought there was a chance. Not let a star player foul out of a game.
That referee had a very dramatic pause before finally saying, "Yep, it is a foul."
Yeah, I mean, because I can't feel like Adam Silver's happy today that the Mavs are down by 3 points after that still, and Luka's not in the game.
No doubt. I mean, look, I'll be honest. Even as a Celtics fan, I'm as someone who's just so sick and tired of everyone hearing people nitpick what the Celtics have done this year. They're going to have 80 wins when they win the title eventually, and there's a chance that they go undefeated on the road. But they've beaten nobody. Blah 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 blah.
That.
I mean, they're killing everybody they have all year. They've been the best team in basketball for the entirety of a year. But that's my own rant. I would have liked to see Luka finish that game because I don't want to hear this continuously. And Luka took himself out of the game when he was on the court. And of course, at the end of it, the last 4 minutes, to his credit, his teammates still hung in there. Dallas did put up, I think, a hell of a fight last night outside of that stretch where Boston just went gangbusters. They started off great. They closed the game out great. But when you got a guy like Luka who just was throwing a hissy fit for the entirety of a game, you got problems. The Astros lost 2 of 3 to the Giants, 5-3 yesterday afternoon, 3-3 on their road trip in California. Framber Valdez seemed to lose his composure in that game. And also, the Boston Celtics have a 3-0 NBA Finals series lead after taking down Dallas 109-99. Luka Dončić lost his composure in that game. He fouled out of that game with 4 minutes to play. Lots of complaining towards the referees to a point where, as much as I love watching Luka shoot in the playoffs, even as he is punching my favorite team directly in the nads every single time he hits one of those just incredible with a defender in his face shots.
Yeah.
I found myself last night thinking to myself, God, I can't stand him. I just can't stand him. It finally happened. Honestly, the first 2 games, didn't mind it. I was like, you know what? He's a really good player. But last night, the complaining, the lack of defense, the seeming lack of accountability, which you heard from him in the last segment where he's talking about how he shouldn't be getting 6 fouls called against him in the NBA Finals when he's clearly playing out of control. To me, I am out in terms of liking Luka Doncic, enjoying him, rooting for him, the sports fan that still lives inside me.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Like, he's James Harden. This is everything that, like, when we've only been doing the show for a couple months together, but we have equal disdain for the style of basketball that James Harden plays. This is what I remember. The relentless complaining, the lack of trying on defense, showing up out of shape, trying to play hero ball when there's better opportunities for your teammates on the court. Like, that's what Luka is. He's James Harden. And he will probably he'll win MVPs like James Harden. He'll have scoring titles like James Harden. Now, he's gone farther than James Harden has ever gone. But, like, I wouldn't put money that Luka Doncic ever plays in the finals again.
Interesting.
He's just... This stuff gets old. And as much of a miracle it is that him and Kyrie, like, maybe that's the biggest difference between him and James, is that Kyrie Irving and Luka get along. But even then, I wonder, like, how long it lasts for.
If I'm Kyrie Irving,
personalities.
if I'm Kyrie, I'm pissed because you know what I like actually seeing from Kyrie Irving now? All players complain to the referees, but last night just watch the way that Kyrie Irving spoke to the referees versus the way Luka spoke to him.
Yeah.
There's a couple of moments where Kyrie goes to the side and has actually a polite conversation with them, and Luka yelling at them all the time. I'm sorry. We all know this in life. You're going to attract flies, right? If there's honey, not vinegar. And Luka is a vinegar thrower. He is just spewing that.
Chris Paul.
Fair comparison.
He's the same way. It's like, Chris Paul and all the issues he has with refs, like, obviously some are more famous than others. It's the same thing. It's the complaint you do, the way you talk to them. That, like, it puts you in a bad spot, puts your team in a bad spot. Someone's got to get to him before next season, because this season's over. It's donezo. Like they're not coming back down from 3-0. They'll be lucky to play a game on Monday night. This is it. And if I'm the Mavs, like someone's just got to try to figure out a way to get him to just chill out. Just shut up and play basketball. Like,
who's going to do that?
Could it be Kyrie?
Is they going to get a Slovenian war hero from the Slovenian Civil War
your
of
coach is a Hall of
1991?
Famer.
Yeah, they have Jason Kidd and Kyrie Irving. I mean, that's what Brian Windhorst in his evisceration of Luka Doncic on SVP. He part of it, because he went on for a while undressing him, but part of it was the fact that the Mavs had talked to him before about keeping his emotions in check, because this happens in regular season games where he just flips out, and there's seasons where he's like dangerously close to getting suspended because of how many technical fouls he'll run up by barking at refs.
If Jason Kidd or Kyrie Irving can't get to Luka, do you think that he who points his fingers dramatically on television, Brian Windhorst, will reach him? Brian Windhorst joined Scott Van Pelt after the game. I got to say, I did not know that Brian Windhorst had this pitch in him. Windhorst flayed Luka Doncic and set him on fire like he was Ramsey Bolton on ESPN last night. Take it away, Windy.
Yeah, I thought it was perfect that Luka fell onto the ground there in an unacceptable position to put himself in with 4 minutes left with 5 fouls, and then immediately looks at the bench and says, "You better bleeping challenge it," as if it's the bench's fault that he just made a terrible play. I'm standing here in the Mavericks tunnel. Over there is the Celtics tunnel. That's where the winners are. If Luka's ever going to be a winner coming out of this tunnel here, he is going to have to use what's happened in this finals as a learning experience. His defensive performance is unacceptable. He is a hole on the court. The Celtics are attacking him. They are ahead in this series because they have attacked him defensively. And you've got a situation here where Luka is complaining about the officiating. They have begged him. They have talked with him. They have pleaded with him. He is costing his team because of how he treats the officials. He's a brilliant player. He does so many things well. They are here because of how he did. His performance in this game is unacceptable, and the reason why the Mavericks are not going to win. He's got to get over this. And the fact that he came out after the game and blamed the officials showed me he's nowhere close yet. So maybe over the summer somebody will get to him, because nobody with the Mavericks or anybody else in his life has. And that's where the Mavericks are at this point. They're never going to get to this tunnel with the trophy if he doesn't improve those aspects of his game.
Burn!
Brian Windhorst, I'll leave it right there. I appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll talk again this series. You think we get to a Game 5 Monday or no?
I'm very interested to see what Luka does on Friday. The 18th banner is coming to Boston. The duck boats are getting loaded up at some point. I want to see how Luka reacts, because he owes his team a better performance in Game 4.
Brian Windhorst, thank you so much.
He's so professional in the second answer, but
yeah, man.
I mean, Windhorst just outdid whatever the hell the Speak for Your Pizza shows are doing this morning on ESPN and Fox. That was beautiful.
Yeah, I also didn't think he had that in his bag, but he's right. Like everything's right. And I heard Sean and Dell talking about this. Like it's very clear his seat must have been in the area of which the Mavs bench was, because he heard all this stuff. But I just don't know who talks to a guy like Luka. Like who tells Luka Doncic to chill out?
It has to be something from within. Like like you can't just be like, oh, you know what? Never thought of it like that. Like it has to be getting embarrassed on the biggest stage in basketball, which mission accomplished. You're halfway there. Now it's the change your ways part. But yeah, I mean, I think some of it is like it's your first finals, and a lot of times your first finals doesn't go super well. So there could be some of that, but it's really what he's been under a microscope when things don't go well for the Mavericks, which was the first part of this season and most of last season. When things don't go wrong, or when things do go wrong, this is what bad Luka games look like. And it's still like he was catching a lot of James Harden comparisons. Might want to look at those James Harden turds that he dropped. He would kill for like an 11 for 22. He would kill for that being the embarrassing game.
409 Josh texted in, I haven't watched much NBA these past 4 to 5 years. The playoffs are the first time I've seen Luka play. I don't enjoy watching European Harden style of play, but there is a big difference between these two, and I think it's entirely their demeanor. When things do not go James Harden's way, he checks out. When things do not go Luka Doncic's way, he gets angry and throws hissy fits. I'll be honest, I'd rather the guy throw angry hissy fits and show that he cares, be a competitor, than just check out entirely, shrug. And other than that, I do understand the comparisons, but people were pushing back on me, Joe, online earlier today. I will admit that whenever I see two young Rockets online accounts, specifically Biased Houston and Brad O, generally it's so sunshiny about the Rockets that whenever I see something that was as simple as, oh, they're going to finally start talking about Luka Doncic the way that they talked about James Harden, which Brad O posted. And to me, I was like, oh, people don't like it when an out-of-shape player who constantly is trying to deceive referees at the end of a game stops playing defense because of all the energy that he is putting into deceiving and barking at referees. A lot of people don't like that stuff. And I think it is fascinating. And I know you made this observation as well, that we are making the comparison to Harden. I still think it's disrespectful to Luka, even if it's early in Luka's career.
I agree, because Luka's performing well. And this is just it's fanboys trying to find a way to defend Harden and say like, Pete, they're too mean to James Harden. Okay, you mean the guy who like wasn't at training camp, the guy who was more focused on getting his jersey retired in a strip club, the guy who show up fat, the guy who brought in and ran out Dwight Howard, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, the guy who ruined your franchise, the guy who got Steven Silas hired and then quit on the team and played the most pathetic basketball I've ever seen in my life. Like, why do people why do people defend this loser?
Guys, I get it. Houston fans. We're Houston fans. The Dallas team is losing. The Dallas Star is being pretty embarrassing in the way he's losing. You can just clown him for that. You do not have to then go, aha, James Harden. How about that? Like, no, this is not a James Harden is good moment. This is a Luka Doncic getting dragged down moment.
To Harden's level.
That is the play. It's honestly not even close to Harden's level. I last night, because I was seeing the same things, I just screenshotted a whole bunch of box scores from elimination games with James Harden. Here's one from 2017 against the Spurs with no Tony Parker, no Kawhi Leonard at home. Toyota Center was rocking. I was watching this game, I think in Austin, with the Spurs fan. Didn't have a good time because the Spurs won 114-75. They won by 40. And James Harden came in with a cool 2 for 11 from the field, 10 points, 7 assists, spreading the ball around. And this is familiar with Luka Doncic, 6 fouls in that game. So he also fouled out of a game, but the difference was his team lost by 40, and he was 3 for 11.
And there's so many more.
Yes.
And I think, Sean, they're trying desperately to drag Luka down to Harden's level because they felt like Harden was unfairly criticized.
Oh, I got one.
How many
Here's
more?
Listener, I have more than one. I have quite a few. A lot of people were taking screenshots of the 2 games last year that Harden played well against the Boston Celtics. I'll even say it's not these Boston Celtics because these Boston Celtics have Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis on them, but he did play well at the start of that series. However, the last 2 games of the series, not as well. Game 6, Boston won by 9. James Harden came in with 43 minutes. Great. Love it. Out there competing. 4 for 16 from the field. 0 from 6 from 3 for 13 points. And then in Game 7, hey, listen, Game 7, the Garden. I get it. It's tough. So I really can kind of hand wave the 9 points on 3 for 11 shooting, 1 for 5 from the field. That's fine. Again, though, we're clowning Luka for going 11 for 27 with 27 points.
I think it's more about, for me, it's even though, Luka's his numbers are much better
against a better team.
He still cost his team the game. Like,
Yeah.
he's still, he has kept them in the game more than James did.
Yeah, they didn't lose by 40.
Yes. But it's still, when the buzzer sounds at the end of the fourth quarter, Luka's not on the court because he's acting like a child. So, like, he is the new James Harden. He just is going to perform.
That's
No.
disrespectful.
He's just going to perform better. He's going to perform
way too
better.
disrespectful.
Just like Anthony Edwards, we crown him next Michael Jordan too fast. We're crowning Luka Doncic next James Harden too fast.
I agree.
He needs years in the game.
Totally
he needs
agree.
years of doing this.
Okay.
Because again, LeBron had the 2011 finals. Jason Tatum had the 2022 finals. You can be bad in finals.
And
Your first
speaking
time.
of, Harden, who made the finals in 2012, was so god-awful against the Miami Heat. People forget about that. And he was a bench player then. He was so bad in that series to the point when the Rockets made that trade on Halloween, I was asking Daryl Morey at the introductory press conference, 23-year-old bushy-eyebrowed me, like, wait, this guy? He was annoyed by that question. That was my first interaction with Daryl. The old Big J Paul on the warpath, thinking that I was about to get a job in Boston and leave forever. This is not fair to compare Luka Doncic to James Harden. You are dragging Luka down several levels.
I am. I guess my perspective is it's more about
Joe, a couple of
how
days
much
ago,
people hate him.
But a couple of days ago, we were saying Luka might be the best player in basketball.
James Harden at one point was one of the best players in basketball.
No one had ever believed that.
But I hated watching him play basketball.
I mean, honestly, I remember when it was my moment where I was completely out on this guy ever being the best player in basketball unless he actually, I don't know, like gets in good shape. It was in the 2014 series against the Portland Trailblazers where in Game 5 and Game 6, all of a sudden the Blazers started backing James Harden down and he ran out of steam. And Dwight Howard was the one who was carrying them those last 2 games before ultimately Chandler Parsons lost Damian Lillard for that game-winning and series-winning 3-point shot that he hit. Like, that was there. And then 2015 the next year. I mean, they're down big against the Clippers, and all of a sudden, Harden's missing in action during one of the greatest comebacks that we've seen in NBA history. Those 2 examples right there before the many more afterwards. And sure, you can bring up a couple of different examples, but Harden has such a long track record. This is Luka's first. Oh, now everyone thinks he's an a-hole moment. And it happens in the NBA Finals. It does. But I to what Sean was saying, I really want everyone to pump the brakes after one game to make the comparison to James Harden. To me, I mean, that is an indictment on somebody's basketball career. If you are comparing him to that gamesman. Like, I don't even think of Harden as an athlete. I think of him as somebody who saw the way that the game was changing and realized, you know what? If I shoot a ton of threes, even if I'm the 270th greatest all-time three-point shooter in three-point percentage, then I'm going to put up a lot of points. And especially if I play iso ball, because no one actually cares about that during the regular season. No one's going to play intense defense against me. And then you get to the playoffs, and I mean, look at what the Boston Celtics were struggling to do when they were struggling to score last night. And the same thing with the Mavericks. When both those teams sucked last night, they were doing exactly what James Harden does every single playoffs, which is settle for really difficult shots instead of, I don't know, trying to be the best teammate he can be.
Yeah, I know it's early for me to put him in that category, so I'll say I'm on Luka is the next Harden. Watch.
No, I'm not even going to do that.
My antennas are up.
Not even going to do that.
No, the examples
My eyes are looking.
The examples I have are from 2015 to 2013.
I know.
Yeah.
That is, or not 2013, 23 last year. So we have 8 years of, and
Correct.
that's not even counting the 2012 finals. That's not counting the Portland series. He has 8 years of being the guy.
I know.
He was second MVP that first year. Luke's has got a while to go.